driven by a great storm far to the south. The gale lasted so long that 12 of the crew died from the effects of the hard work and the bad food, and all the others were worn out and weak. On a sailing ship, when the weather is very heavy, all hands have to be constantly on deck, and there is little rest for the men. Perhaps a sail, one of the few that can still be carried in such a gale, may be blown to ribbons by the furious wind, and a new one has to be bent on. The night, perhaps, is dark. The tattered canvas is thrashing with a noise like thunder, the ship burying her decks under angry black seas every few minutes. The men's hands are numb with the cold and the wet, and the hard, dangerous work aloft. There is no chance of going below when their job is done, to turn in between warm, dry blankets in a snug berth. Possibly even those who belong to the watch below may have to remain on deck, or, if they have the good fortune to be allowed to go below, they may no sooner have dropped off asleep, rolled round in blankets which perhaps have been wet ever since the gale began, than there is a thump, thump overhead, and one of the watch on deck bellows down the forecastle hatch, "All hands shorten sail!" And out they must tumble again, once more to battle with the hungry, roaring seas and the raging wind. So when there has been a long spell of bad weather, it is no wonder that the men are worn out. And when, as was the case with Gulliver's ship, the food also is bad, it is easy to understand why so many of the crew had died. It was on the 5th of November, the beginning of summer in latitude south of the equator. The storm had not yet cleared off, and the weather was very thick, the wind coming in furious squalls that drove the ship along at great speed, when suddenly from the lookout man came a wild cry, "Breakers ahead!" But so close had the vessel come to the rocks before they were seen through the thick driving spray, that immediately, with a heavy plunge, she crashed into the reef and split her bows. Gulliver and 6 of the crew lowered a boat and got clear of the wreck and of the breakers, but the men were so weak from overwork that they could not handle the boat in such a sea, and very soon, during a fierce squall, she sank. What became of the men, Gulliver never knew, for he saw none of them again. Probably they were drowned at once, for they were too weak to keep long afloat in a sea breaking so heavily. And indeed, Gulliver himself was like to have been lost. He swam till no strength or feeling was left in his arms and legs, swam bravely, his breath coming in great sobs, his eyes blinded with the salt seas that broke over his head. Still he struggled on, utterly spent, until at last, in a part where the wind seemed to have less force, and the seas swept over him less furiously, on letting down his legs, he found that he was within his depth. But the shore shelved so gradually that for nearly a mile he had to wade wearily through shallow water, till, fainting almost with fatigue, he reached dry land. By this time, darkness was coming on, and there were no signs of houses or of people. He staggered forward, but a little distance, and then, on the short, soft turf, sank down exhausted and slept. When he woke, the sun was shining, and he tried to rise, but not by any means could he stir hand or foot. Gulliver had fallen asleep lying on his back, and now he found that his arms and legs were tightly fastened to the ground. Across his body were numbers of thin but strong cords, and even his hair, which was very long, was pegged down so securely that he could not turn his head. All round about him there was a confused sound of voices, but he could see nothing except the sky, and the sun shone so hot and fierce into his eyes that he could scarcely keep them open. Soon he felt something come gently up his left leg and forward onto his breast, almost to his chin. Looking down as much as possible, he saw standing there a very little man, not more than 6 inches high, armed with a bow and arrows. Then many more small men began to swarm over him. Gulliver let out such a roar of wonder and fright that they all turned and ran, many of them getting bad falls in their hurry to get out of danger. But very quickly the little people came back again. This time, with a great struggle, Gulliver managed to break the cords that fastened his left arm, and at the same time by a violent wrench.